Chapter 12. The Fusion. In the library of the Supreme Kais, frustration accumulated like dust on the shelves. Suddenly, Supreme Kai paused over a passage in a particularly ancient tome. "Kibito, look at this," he said with urgency. "Here it mentions an ancient attempt to steal dark energy in hell." It echoed the ancient tales of the Supreme Kais, barely a vague myth. However, his hope was fleeting. Although the record confirmed the existence of a similar threat in the past, the information was frustratingly incomplete. Large portions of the tome were illegible, eaten away by time and oblivion. The text mentioned that a dark being was confronted by the Supreme Kais of another era. But the identities of these Supreme Kais and the details of how they stopped the threat were lost to the mists of a past so remote it seemed more myth than history. The absence of exact dates increased the sensation of an unreachable mystery. It was as if history had vanished into the mist of time right at its most critical point, leaving an unsolved enigma. Supreme Kai closed the tome. His face turned graver than usual. "These files are so incomplete that they barely shed any light. We cannot stay here." Thus, Supreme Kai and Kibito teleported back to the surface of the sacred world, where Goku and Oob continued to make the ground tremble with their training. On Toria, the fusion dance was executed perfectly to everyone's astonishment. The blinding glare of the fusion cleared the clouds and revealed the entire coast. The sea crashed violently against the cliffs, and the city lay like a shattered chessboard beneath their feet. When the light dissipated, Gotenks emerged wrapped in a golden aura. On the sacred world, everyone felt the sudden and colossal explosion of ki. It was an immense power, familiar yet unnervingly distant. "Huh? What was that?" "It's Gotenks!" exclaimed Goku, stopping a punch mid-strike. "Yes, but it is strange. They are in a distant sector of the universe, far from Earth," said Supreme Kai. "What could be happening? What are Goten and Trunks doing in that region of the universe?" wondered Goku, with a serious expression. Something didn't add up. The coincidence made him suspicious. Perhaps it could be related to the incident in Hell. Goku, Oob, Supreme Kai, and Kibito grouped together to teleport to Gotenks' location to investigate. On Earth, in the gravity chamber, Vegeta stopped his brutal training. His face hardened instantly upon perceiving the burst of Gotenks' ki. "What? Did they finally have to resort to fusion?" he muttered with a hint of disbelief and annoyance. Gohan, who was working, also felt the wave of power. His expression turned serious and puzzled. "What? Where is that power coming from? It's Gotenks. But why is his ki so far away? What could be happening?" he wondered with bated breath. Gotenks didn't waste a moment. The air shattered as he launched himself forward. He lunged at Gravek. The villain, blind with fury, roared and unleashed arcane suppression. This time, fueled by his malice, the technique surged at peak intensity. Gotenks' golden aura crackled in blue, losing intensity. But Gotenks simply smiled. "Is that the best you can do?" Gravek tried to attack. He threw a swipe, but Gotenks disappeared. A blow to the back shook him with violence. Before Gravek could react, Gotenks reappeared below and delivered a rising kick that sent him rocketing into the sky. "And now for a crash landing!" shouted Gotenks. He appeared above him and clasped his hands together like a sledgehammer. The impact resonated with the force of a meteorite. Gravek crashed against the ground, opening a crater that swallowed half a square. Guess I went a little overboard on that one?" Gotenks laughed. In the rear, Halira covered her mouth, unable to process the raw power she was witnessing. "No, it can't be," she whispered, her voice trembling in awe. Piccolo, observing from high above, nodded to himself. That is fusion, he thought, relieved by the effectiveness of the attack. Gravek rose amidst the rubble, bleeding, shaking with pure rage. He desperately attempted one last offensive, a final attack driven by madness. Gotenks didn't even flinch. He effortlessly swatted the energy away. At that crucial moment, a sharp sound cut the air. Goku, Ub, Supreme Kai, and Kibito teleported in from the sacred world. The sudden appearance interrupted the battle. Gotenks turned sharply in the air, and Piccolo was startled, both visibly surprised. "Little late to the party, aren't you?" Gotenks snapped, crossing his arms in the air before anyone could speak. "Don't worry, we already have everything under control." "What are you doing here?" asked Piccolo. "What a mess," exclaimed Goku, observing the destruction and Gravek, who was trembling with fury next to the crater. "How did you get here? What is happening on this planet?" "That being, he possesses tremendously dark energy," said Supreme Kai, distressed. A roar broke the exchange. Gravek transformed into a beast of pure anger, charged toward the newcomers. "Ub!" exclaimed Goku, without turning around. "Right!" nodded Ub, preparing for the attack. Gravek extended his hand. His tendons creaked when he forced the suppression against Ub. From the boy's white aura, blue flashes began to emerge. Ub looked at his hands for an instant, feeling the sudden void in his strength. Both he and Goku noticed, perplexed, the unnatural drop in ki. "Careful, he's capable of reducing ki," shouted Piccolo. "A technique that reduces ki. So that's it," muttered Goku, with a sharp gaze. Despite the suppression, Ub clenched his fists. Gravek lunged with a barrage of frenetic blows, but the power gap was still immense. Ub didn't give an inch. He blocked the first strike and swatted the second aside with the back of his hand, completely unfazed. Suddenly, Ub released a light ki-eye. The invisible wave hit Gravek like a solid wall. The villain was sent flying, tumbling through the air. Gravek recovered, blind with anger, and charged again. Ub dodged him with a minimal turn of the waist. With a sharp movement, he connected a blow to the stomach that folded Gravek and slammed him into the ground. The dust rose after the impact. "Leave him to me," exclaimed Gotenks, interposing himself. "It's time I put an end to this." While Gravek tried to get up, Gotenks launched 3 galactic donuts. The rings closed over Gravek in rapid succession, binding his arms and legs, immobilizing him completely. "Now you look like some weird lamp," Gotenks snickered smugly. Gravek, consumed by madness, tried to free himself. His ki skyrocketed, and his aura expanded to the maximum. The ground shook, and the energy rings vibrated violently, containing his fury. But the effort was useless. The immense pressure of the rings, added to his own overload, was too much. His body began to crack, unable to support his own power. He spat blood. His life force began to fade. Barely a thread of ki pulsed inside him. His eyes went out of focus, and the suppression technique collapsed. He let himself fall to his side, still trapped in the rings with ragged breathing. On that threshold of death, his madness faded. He turned his head slowly, looking at Gotenks with empty yet clear eyes. What have I been doing?" he whispered. Gotenks, as disconcerted as he was, dispelled his galactic donuts. Gravek slumped to the ground, broken and defeated, but finally back to his senses.